October 5, 1963. 11:06 p.m. Small's Paradise was breathing heavy that night. Horn players were sweating under yellow lights, the saxophone crying over a walking bass line that made glasses vibrate. Cigarette smoke curled to the ceiling like it was part of the decor. Men in suits, women in silk, whispers and deals underneath the music, Harlem's bloodstream, all inside four walls. In the far corner, under a low-hanging lamp, Ellsworth, Bumpy Johnson sat at his usual table. White shirt, dark tie, perfectly tailored suit. Hat resting on the chair beside him. He wasn't laughing, didn't need to. Men came to him, not the other way around. A councilman had just finished complaining about budgets. A numbers banker was waiting for a nod about tomorrow's collections. And then the coffee came. Her name was Lila. 22, maybe 23. Slim, quick on her feet, hair tied back in a scarf. She'd been working at Small's for 3 months, long enough to learn who mattered, short enough to still be scared of them. She walked toward Bumpy's table with a small silver tray, a white cup of black coffee, a glass of water, a folded napkin. Her hands looked steady enough, but if you'd watched her eyes, you'd have seen something else. They weren't on the tray. They were on the bar. 3 men in dark suits, not from Harlem, not regulars, sat at the far end. They weren't watching the band. They were watching Bumpy. Lila had noticed them when they came in. They didn't tip. They didn't smile. And every time Bumpy glanced away from the room, their eyes sharpened, like they were measuring something. She didn't know guns or mob territories or commission sit-downs. But she knew when wolves walked into a room pretending to be house cats. Her manager had told her one thing the day she started. If you ever see something that feels wrong, he'd said, and you can't get to me, you get to him. He'd nodded toward Bumpy's table. And if you can't talk, he'd added, you signal. Now, as she took the last 3 steps toward that table, her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it over the trumpet. She passed the bar. One of the strangers, slick hair, small scar along the jawline, shifted his coat just enough for her to catch a glimpse. Metal, shiny, tucked in a holster. Bumpy's table was dead ahead. Lila's stomach twisted. This wasn't just wrong. This was about to be something you read about the next day, if you were lucky enough to read anything at all. She reached the table. Her foot caught on the edge of the rug. The silver tray pitched forward. The cup of coffee flew. It hit Bumpy's lap, dark liquid splashing onto his trousers, hot enough to make an average man jump up cursing. The entire section of the club froze. The councilman flinched. The numbers banker's mouth fell open. A nearby couple stared, half expecting to see the legendary Bumpy Johnson snap a waitress in half for the insult. Lila gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth like she wanted to rewind the moment. I'm so sorry, Mr. Johnson, I'm so... She bent closer. Too close for an apology. Her lips barely moved. 3 men at the bar, she whispered, breath shaking. Guns. Watching you. The one on the left just signaled. Bumpy didn't move. Didn't jerk. Didn't even look down at his soaked lap. He reached, calmly, for a napkin on the table. Dabbed his thigh once. Twice. His eyes never left Lila's. You okay? He asked, voice level. She swallowed hard and nodded, eyes wide. Yes, sir, she said out loud, louder now for anyone listening. It just slipped. In the corner of his vision, Bumpy could see them. 3 suits. One with a scar along the jaw. One fiddling with his tie. The third pretending to be more interested in the bottle than the room. They weren't Harlem. They were a problem. Bumpy smiled, an expression so small most people would have missed it. But Lila didn't. Accidents happen, he said softly. He took the tray from her hand, set it gently on the table, and leaned back as if nothing in the world had changed. The band came back in. The club exhaled. Conversation stumbled back to life. And in the space between heartbeats, Lila realized 2 things. She might have just saved a man's life. And she might have just written the last page of her own, depending on how the next 5 minutes went. Because once you give a rescue signal in a room like Small's Paradise, there's no going back. Earlier that afternoon, word had reached Bumpy through the usual soft channels. A driver with good ears, a bartender with expensive silence, A cop with debts bigger than his paycheck. There was a meeting downtown. Somebody had said his name. Harlem was always on the edge of somebody's plate. The Italian mob saw it as numbers, money, and heroin routes. The Irish saw it as a side hustle. Politicians saw it as votes and headlines. Everybody wanted a piece, but nobody wanted the responsibility. Bumpy had drawn a line years ago: Harlem runs Harlem. It wasn't a slogan. It was a warning. The 5 families tolerated it as long as the money flowed and the peace held. But peace is fragile when greed keeps whispering in men's ears. Those 3 men at the bar? They weren't tourists. They were explorers. Sent to poke the edges. To see how close they could sit. To see if Bumpy was slipping. Bumpy had noticed them the minute they walked in, hours before the coffee hit his lap. He'd clocked the way they scanned exits, not women. The way their suits said downtown in the cut. The way they didn't nod to anyone because they didn't respect anyone there yet. They hadn't done anything. That was the problem. You can't just throw men out of a public club for having the wrong haircut. You have to wait. For them to make a mistake. Or for someone else to spot the twitch before it becomes a trigger pull. That someone was Lila, who had no idea she just stepped onto a board where the pieces were worth millions and bodies. Her manager's warning hadn't been romantic. It was practical. Bumpy didn't own Smalls, but he might as well have. He kept it safe. That meant the staff had quiet instructions. If you see guns on men who don't tip like they should and don't belong where they're sitting, you don't scream. You signal. A spilled drink. A knocked over ashtray. A mistake that gets you close enough to whisper in the one man's ear who could do something immediately. Lila had never practiced it, but fear taught her fast. Bumpy dabbed his lap again, more for the show than the stain. Go get a towel, he said out loud. And another coffee. Yes, sir, she said, backing away. He didn't look at the bar. Not directly. Instead, he let his eyes wander lazily over the room, like a man bored with the company at his own table. He saw the scarred one lean toward the middle one, lips moving. He saw the middle one shift his hand under the bar, fingers brushing his side. He saw the third one adjust his sleeve, exposing a hint of leather. Guns. Not idle. He also saw something else. A man at the back wall, nursing a drink, not really watching the band. Bumpy's right hand. Always in the room when he needed to be, never where anyone expected. Bumpy scratched his chin once. Junie's eyes flicked to him. Bumpy tapped his napkin 3 times on the table. To everyone else, it looked like a man drying his hand. To Junie, it was a quiet siren. We have a problem in the room. Junie didn't look at the bar either. He just drained his glass, stood up casually, and walked toward the bathroom. 2 other men, scattered at different tables, adjusted their chairs. Nobody rushed. Rushing gets you remembered. Moving slow, moving right, that's what keeps you alive. At the bar, the middle stranger finally made his decision. He pushed his drink away, stood, and straightened his jacket. This was it. Coming to a Harlem club with guns is a threat. Standing with them is a move. Bumpy's fingers tightened on the napkin. The waitress had done her part. Now it was his turn to decide how loud the answer was going to be. The middleman from the bar started walking. Not straight toward Bumpy, that would have been too obvious. He angled his path, like he was just going to the bathroom, just passing by, hand in his pocket. Scar jaw peeled off in the opposite direction, heading toward the side of the stage. The third one pretended to be fascinated by the band, inching closer to the center of the room. Triangulation. Boxing in the target. Junie stepped out of the hallway by the bathrooms and pretended to stumble into middle man. "'Excuse me," Junie said, hands up, shoulders loose. Middle man scowled and brushed past, but the collision had done what it needed to do. Slowed him, broke his rhythm, bought 3 extra seconds. Sometimes 3 seconds is an entire lifetime in this business. At Bumpy's table, the councilman was still talking, oblivious, about zoning or some other nonsense that didn't matter when guns were walking toward you. Bumpy cut him off with a gentle pat on the arm. "Take your drink to the bar," he said quietly. "Now." The councilman blinked. "What's now?" Bumpy repeated, eyes never leaving his glass. Something in his tone made the politician move. He got up, flustered, muttered something about checking on a friend, and walked away just as Scar Jaw reached the back of Bumpy's chair. Scar Jaw's hand slipped inside his coat. He never got it back out. A hand, not Bumpy's, latched onto his wrist from behind like a steel trap. Scar Jaw's eyes widened as another man, one of Bumpy's, who'd been leaning on a nearby pillar, invisible until now, twisted his arm down toward his own waistband. Club policy, the man murmured in Scar Jaw's ear. We don't let strangers pull things out in the middle of the show. Scar Jaw tried to turn, but something sharp dug into his ribs under his jacket. Not enough to pierce. Enough to promise. Across the room, Middleman realized something was off. He reached for his own weapon. Or tried to. A bar stool scraped loudly as another Harlem man, accidentally, bumped him from behind, knocking his balance just enough. A glass toppled, shattering at his feet. Watch it. Middleman snapped. Sorry, friend, the man said, hands raised, but his eyes were not sorry at all. In the chaos of spilled drinks, a hand slid along Middleman's jacket, quicker than a pickpocket, and suddenly his gun wasn't on his hip anymore. The third stranger, the one by the band, finally moved, reaching into his coat. He didn't see Lila standing just behind him with a tray. She tripped again. The metal tray slammed into his forearm. The gun clattered to the floor. The saxophone screeched to a stop. Now the whole room knew something was happening. But no one knew exactly what. Except Bumpy. He rose slowly from his chair, not a rush. Not a leap. The kind of rise that said, I chose this moment. Turn the music down, he said. The bandleader, hands frozen over the keys, nodded shakily. The volume dropped to a nervous murmur. Every eye in the room turned toward Bumpy. Scar Jaw was pinned, breathing hard. Middleman was standing in a tiny lake of someone else's drink, hand empty at his side. Third man was backed against a table, hands stinging, gun gone. Bumpy adjusted his tie. Gentlemen, he said, voice carrying just enough, this is a social club. People come here to listen to music. To eat. To drink. To mind their business. He stepped around his chair, taking a few casual steps toward the center of the room. Now, I'm a reasonable man, he continued. I understand sometimes, strangers get curious. They want to see what Harlem feels like up close. They walk into rooms they don't belong in. He paused, letting his gaze drift over the three men, never focusing too long on any of them, as if they were just part of the scenery. But there are rules, Bumpy said. You don't come into my places armed, uninvited, and you definitely don't sit at my bar staring at me like you're debating pulling something stupid. A nervous laugh tittered somewhere in the back. It died quickly. He nodded slightly toward Junie. Collect, Bumpy said. In a blur that looked almost like a dance, his men relieved the three outsiders of their weapons. No punches. No screams. Just silent, practiced movements. Junie walked over to Bumpy's table and set all three guns on the white tablecloth, the steel dull under the soft lamplight. Bumpy looked down at them, then back up at the room. This, he said calmly, is what we call being rude. He picked one up between two fingers, like it offended him. Now, I could handle rudeness one way, he said, letting the implication hang in the air. Loud. Message. Headlines tomorrow. He put the gun back down. Or, he said, I can handle it like a host who's been disrespected at his own party. He turned fully toward the three men now, his smile thin. You boys finished your drinks? He asked. None of them answered. That's a shame, Bumpy said. Because you're finished here. He nodded toward the door. Walk out, he said. All three of you. Hands where my people can see them. Get in whatever car you borrowed. Drive back to whoever sent you. And you tell them this. We went up to Harlem to watch Bumpy Johnson. He watched us instead. Scar Jaw tried to salvage some pride. You don't know who we work for, he muttered. Bumpy's eyes hardened. The problem is, he said softly, I do. He took a step closer. And the bigger problem is, he added, they should have known better than to send you here. The three men left Small's Paradise that night without their guns and without their swagger. They didn't get beaten in front of everyone. They didn't get dragged into an alley. Bumpy didn't need to do all that. Public humiliation is its own kind of violence. As the door closed behind them, the room exhaled in strange unison. The bandleader looked at Bumpy, waiting. "Play," Bumpy said. Music started again, shaky at first, then settling back into its groove like a heart calming after a sprint. Bumpy walked back to his table. The councilman reappeared, face pale, tie crooked. "What just?" he began. Bumpy cut him off with a look. "You were never here," Bumpy said quietly. The politician shut his mouth. Lila hovered near the wall, unsure if she should disappear or wait. "Lila," Bumpy called without looking. She froze. "Yes, sir?" "Come here." She walked over slowly, every step feeling like it might end in a firing squad. Bumpy gestured to the now empty coffee cup on the table. "You owe me a fresh one," he said. Her heart slammed. "Yes, sir. I'll get." "Wait," he said. She stopped. Bumpy looked up at her, expression unreadable. "You saw them," he said. "Before anyone else did." She swallowed. "They were wrong, sir. They didn't look at the stage. They only looked at you." "You could have walked past," Bumpy said. "Pretended you didn't see. Hoped it wasn't your problem." Her eyes flicked, involuntarily, to the 3 guns still sitting on the table. "I got little brothers," she said quietly. "I see men like that come in here with those eyes. I figured if something was gonna happen, better you know before they do." A small smile tugged at the corner of Bumpy's mouth. "What did you whisper?" he asked, though he remembered perfectly. 3 men at the bar. Guns. Watching you. The one on the left just signaled, she recited, voice barely audible. Bumpy nodded. "That's good work," he said. She blinked. "Work. Keeping this place safe is work," Bumpy said. "It's not just me and Junie and a few hard men. It's the waitresses who see things. The bartenders who hear things. The old ladies who watch cars that don't belong on their block." He picked up one of the guns, turned it over once, and then set it back down. "I can only protect what I can see," he said. "Tonight I saw because you told me where to look." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded stack of bills, and slid it toward her. She stared at it like it might burn. "I can't take that," she whispered. "You can," Bumpy said. "For 2 reasons." He held up a finger. 1, because you just saved a room full of people from ducking under tables. A second finger. 2, because no matter what these men think, you are not invisible in my house. She took the money with shaking hands. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," she said. He nodded once. "Now," he said, "go bring me that coffee. Carefully this time." Outside, on the street, word had already started to spread. 3 armed strangers came in. Bumpy took their guns like he was collecting rent. Little Waitress set it off, they say. By the following week, downtown had also gotten the message. The 3 men sat in a dark paneled room, explaining to a man with a ring and a short temper how they'd gone uptown armed and come back disarmed. "He didn't even touch us," one of them said, confused, nursing a bruised wrist. "He just embarrassed us." Their boss leaned back, eyes cold. "You went into his place," he said slowly. "You watched him like prey. You got made by a waitress. And you let a Harlem man collect your guns in front of a whole room." He shook his head. "We're not touching Harlem like that again," he said. "Not with idiots like you." Because for all their power, money, and reach, the one thing the downtown men couldn't afford was to look foolish. And Bumpy had made them look very, very foolish. Back at Smalls, life went on. Drinks were poured. Songs were played. Deals were whispered. But the staff moved a little differently. They knew now, sharper than before, that their eyes and hands mattered. A spilled drink could be clumsiness. Or a warning. A whispered sentence could be small talk. Or a lifeline. Lila never became a gangster. She didn't start carrying weapons or making threats. She worked her shifts, counted her tips, took care of her family. But when she walked into a room, she did it knowing something important. Once, in Bumpy Johnson's Harlem, she tripped on purpose, spilled hot coffee on the wrong man in the right moment. And because of that, 3 guns went home in somebody else's hands. If this story about a waitress, a whisper, and the night one accident saved a room full of people gave you something to think about, you know what to do. Hit like so more people hear it. Subscribe for more Harlem legends. And tell me in the comments. If you were Lila, would you have risked spilling that coffee? Or would you have stayed quiet and hoped for the best?